I knew something was off the day I found the envelope under the couch cushions. It was a plain white envelope, no markings, sealed, but it felt heavier than it should. I wasn't even looking for anything, just digging around for the TV remote after my daughter had her usual tornado of an afternoon tearing through the living room. I almost threw the envelope away without opening it, but something about the weight made me pause. I tore it open with one finger and slid out a single SD card. No note, no explanation, just the card. I stared at it for a long time, heart thudding louder than it should. It could have been anything, but in that quiet moment, some part of me already knew it was going to ruin my life. My name's Paul. I'm 39, been married to Lacey for 7 years. We've got a 5-year-old daughter, Chloe, and until recently, my 73-year-old Uncle Ray had been living with us. He's not my dad, but he raised me like one after my mother passed, and my real father disappeared into some version of grief that never included parenting. Ray was my compass growing up, rough around the edges but fiercely loyal. When he started showing signs of early dementia, I didn't hesitate. I offered him our guest room. Lacey agreed. Actually, she suggested it. Said she couldn't imagine putting him in a home. Said it was the least we could do after everything he'd done for me. I was proud of her for that. Grateful. I thought we were a team. At first, everything seemed fine. Ray would forget where he put his glasses or repeat stories at dinner, but nothing major. Lacey helped out more than I expected. Cooked for him, reminded him about his meds. She even started keeping a journal to track his better and worse days. But after a few months, she started pulling away. I'd come home from work and find her sitting in the kitchen alone, wine glass half full, staring off like she didn't hear me come in. She started snapping at me about small things, dishes left in the sink, forgetting to take out the trash, things that never used to matter. When I asked her what was wrong, she'd always say, "Just tired," or "Work's been crazy." And I believed her. I didn't think anything of it until the night Chloe had a fever, and I had to go digging through Ray's room for the thermometer. That's when I found the monitor. A simple nanny cam, the kind you plug into an outlet with a little fisheye lens and night vision. It was hidden behind a stack of books on his dresser. I didn't remember putting it there. We had used baby monitors back when Chloe was little, but I thought they'd all been boxed up and stored away. This was different. Sleek, newer. Something someone would set up deliberately and quietly. I brought it into the living room and asked Lacey if she knew about it. She shrugged. Maybe Ray put it there? He's been paranoid lately. I didn't push. I should have, but I didn't. Now, days later, I'm standing in the garage with an SD card that had been shoved into our couch, sweating like I'm on trial and shaking like my blood's turned to static. Chloe's asleep upstairs. Ray's gone. We moved him to a care facility 3 weeks ago after a particularly bad episode where he wandered out of the house at 3 a.m. in his robe. The police found him half a mile away, confused and barefoot. Lacey said she couldn't handle it anymore. Said she was scared for Chloe's safety. I didn't argue. I cried after dropping him off, but I told myself it was for the best. I plugged the card into my laptop, hand hovering over the trackpad, and hit play on the first file. It was from 3 months ago. The image was slightly distorted, the audio scratchy, but the scene was unmistakable. Our guest room. Ray sitting on the edge of his bed, staring blankly at the wall. Then Lacey walked in. She didn't notice the camera, or didn't care. Her voice was low, almost gentle. "I made you eggs. Don't forget to take your pill." Ray mumbled something back, unintelligible, maybe just a grunt. And then, suddenly, her tone shifted. "I don't know why you're still here," she said. "You should have gone a long time ago." Ray turned toward her, slow, blinking. "You just linger. It's pathetic, really. Every time I look at you, I see what my life used to be before you moved in. You and your constant babbling and accidents. You think I don't notice how much money we've spent on you? Do you know what that money could have gone to?" She stepped closer. "You're ruining us." I stopped the video. My pulse roared in my ears. I felt cold, like I was outside in the middle of winter. It wasn't anger yet. Not even disbelief. It was a kind of numb horror. Not just at what she said, but how she said it. Calm, practiced, like she'd done it before. I checked the card. There were 11 more video files. I didn't watch them all that night. I couldn't. I deleted the originals off the laptop, encrypted a backup, and uploaded a copy to cloud storage. I didn't sleep. I lay next to Lacey, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together all the things I'd brushed off over the past year. Her quick temper, her sudden love for solo time. The way Ray had started flinching when she walked into the room. And the envelope. That stupid, goddamn envelope. Who put it under the cushion? Chloe never goes in the couch. Ray wouldn't have remembered. Lacey certainly wouldn't leave it out in the open. Which meant someone had wanted me to find it. Maybe Ray? Maybe he'd noticed the camera. Maybe he'd waited for me to see what he couldn't say. I watched one more clip, just before dawn. In it, Lacey stands in the doorway, arms crossed, while Ray tries to fold a pair of pants and struggles. You know, Paul would be better off if you just disappeared. He looks up at her like a child who's just been slapped. She walks out without another word. When I made breakfast that morning, she smiled like nothing had happened, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted to take Chloe to the zoo that weekend. I told her sure, and I meant it. I would take Chloe to the zoo, just the two of us, because something had cracked inside me. A quiet promise, still forming, but solid. She had made Ray invisible in his own home. And now, I was going to make sure she knew what it felt like to be watched when you thought no one was looking. I spent the next 4 days pretending to be the same husband I'd always been. Predictable, distracted, slightly overworked, always tired. I laughed at her bad jokes, rubbed her back when she sighed dramatically about her job, even bought her the lemon candles she liked from that overpriced home boutique. I played the part so well, I almost convinced myself that nothing was wrong. But underneath it all, I was watching, listening, planning. I started by gathering every bit of digital access in our lives. Changed the passwords to the cloud drive where I'd stored the recordings. Moved my savings into a separate account she didn't know about. Opened a P.O. box 2 towns over. It was exhausting, living this double life, but I needed time. I needed space. And I needed more than just those video clips. Because if I was going to confront her, I wanted to make sure there were no shadows left to hide in. On Friday, I dropped Chloe off at daycare, told Lacey I had a long day of meetings, and instead drove to Ray's care facility. I hadn't seen him in over a week. I'd been avoiding it, scared of what I'd see in his eyes. Fear, confusion, maybe even betrayal. But when I walked in, he looked up from a puzzle book and smiled. "Well, there's the prodigal nephew," he said, his voice raspier than usual but still teasing. "Thought you'd fallen into a well." I sat down beside him, suddenly ashamed. "Hey, Uncle Ray. Sorry. It's been a week." He patted my hand. "You've got your own mess to deal with." I can tell. That was the thing about Ray. He always could. I told him everything. Not all at once, but in pieces, like I was admitting it to myself as much as to him. About the SD card. About the monitor. About the things Lacey had said. When I finished, he looked away for a long time. "I wondered if I was losing my mind," he said finally. "Sometimes I thought I imagined her tone, but I knew something was off. I should have seen it sooner," I whispered. "No, you wanted to believe the best in her. That's not a weakness, Paul. That's just love." We sat in silence for a while, until he said, "You planning to leave her?" I nodded slowly. "Working on it. Quietly." "Good," he said. "Just make sure she doesn't take anything else from you on her way out." It wasn't until I was walking out that one of the nurses, a woman named Shannon, touched my arm. "Mr. Lott," she said. "Sorry, I don't mean to pry, but something happened a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know if I should say anything." I stopped. "What kind of something?" She glanced around, lowered her voice. "Your wife came to visit Mr. Ray alone, right after he moved in. She said you were working late. But the thing is, she wasn't here long. Just 10 minutes. When she left, he was shaking. Wouldn't talk. We thought it was just the move upsetting him." My blood chilled. "Did she say anything to him?" "I wasn't in the room," she said. "But I saw her face when she walked out. Cold. Smiling, but not real." "Did you write this down? In any reports?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll print it for you." I drove home feeling like I had a bomb ticking in my chest. If she'd followed him there, even after he was gone from the house, what else was she capable of? That night, I tested a theory. I told her I had a work dinner and left the house around 6. Instead of going far, I circled back and parked down the street. My car was hidden, but I had the app connected to the nanny cam still set up in Chloe's room. Mostly because she liked to read before bed and I'd occasionally check in from work. I used it now to listen, ears straining for any clues. At 6:45, she was on the phone. "No, I'm telling you, it's almost over," she said, pacing in the hallway. "He's barely around anymore. And when he is, it's like he's checked out. Once that house is in my name, I'm done." A pause. Then laughter. "No, I haven't told him yet. I'm not stupid. He thinks I'm still on his side. It's hilarious. Honestly, I think he's starting to crack. Just a little more, and I can push him over. Make him think he's the problem. He already blames himself for Ray. She went silent for a moment. I know what I'm doing. I ended the feed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. She wasn't just cruel. She was calculating. She'd been trying to gaslight me. Make me believe I was the one breaking. She was setting the stage for some kind of quiet implosion. She could step away from looking like the hero. But here's the part one didn't expect. The twist I never saw coming. Lacey wasn't working from home like she claimed. I found that out when I finally checked her laptop. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed answers. She'd always worked for a mid-sized marketing agency, remote since the pandemic started. But when I opened her browser, I didn't find any work emails. No Zoom logs. Nothing after March. Instead, I found a long chain of messages. Not from her boss. From a man named Ben. Ben had sent her money. There were payment confirmations. Hundreds. Over the past 5 months. Some labeled support. Others had subject lines like, for your patience, or, thanks for last week. My stomach turned. I clicked further, scrolled through the messages. You look beautiful today. I wish you'd just leave him already. You deserve more than a house with a dying old man and a husband who doesn't see you. Soon, okay? Just like we talked about. She'd been having an emotional affair, maybe more. And worse. She was preparing to use Ray's decline as an excuse to break me down, strip me of my stability, and walk away with everything she could. I was never supposed to find that SD card. That much was clear now. Which meant someone else put it there. Maybe Ray. Maybe Chloe. But then I remembered something Chloe had said the night I found it. Something I'd brushed off at the time. I saw Mommy hide the card. She'd whispered while coloring. She said it was trash. I hadn't thought about it. Just nodded. Told her to focus on her drawings. But now it all made sense. She hadn't put it there for me to find. She tried to get rid of it. And our daughter, without knowing what it was, saved it. That was when I made the choice. Not just to leave. Not just to gather more evidence. But to end this carefully, precisely, in a way that would leave no cracks for her to squeeze through. She had shown me her real face. Now I was going to show her mine. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Lacey was still asleep, curled on her side, her face buried into the pillow like she hadn't moved all night. I stared at her for a long time, and for just a flicker of a second, I thought about the person she used to be. The woman who used to fall asleep with her hand tucked into mine, who laughed with her whole body, who cried when we brought Chloe home from the hospital like her heart couldn't hold it all. I didn't know when she'd started fading into someone else, or if she'd ever really been that woman at all. I walked out of the bedroom, careful not to make a sound. I didn't even breathe too loudly until I was in the garage, where my laptop and duplicate storage drives were stashed. I spent the next 3 hours cataloging everything. Every file, every message, every receipt I could find on her computer, tablet, and phone backup. Things I had quietly mirrored weeks earlier. My goal wasn't just to protect myself anymore. I was building a timeline, a map, and a trap. The way she'd been speaking to Ben, flirting, plotting, lamenting how tied up she felt. It was all there. I read through it like someone trying to understand a language they once knew, but now couldn't speak. She'd been telling him for weeks she was almost done with me, that she was lining things up, that soon she would have access to the house and custody. That one stopped me cold. She wanted Chloe, not because she loved her, but because it was leverage. From that moment forward, my plan changed. It was no longer about just exposing Lacey. It was about keeping Chloe away from someone who saw her as a bargaining chip. I started setting the stage. Step 1. I contacted a private investigator, a woman named Petra, recommended by my lawyer. She moved quickly. Within 48 hours, she had photos of Lacey meeting with Ben. They never kissed, never touched, but they were too close for two people who were just friends. Petra said she'd keep tracking. I gave her the go-ahead to dig deep. I needed everything: background checks, employment status, financial records. Step 2. I called in a favor from my friend Jonah, a former family therapist turned school counselor. He agreed to speak with Chloe, not in a formal session, just to check in. I wanted to make sure Chloe wasn't carrying trauma I couldn't see. He met with her at the playground under the guise of helping kids with big feelings. She loved it. Later, he told me, she's okay. Still bright, still soft. But she knows something's off. That hurt more than any betrayal. Knowing my 5-year-old could feel the tension I'd worked so hard to hide. Step 3. I installed one more camera. This one in the nursery closet, facing outward, hidden behind a stack of folded blankets. It pointed directly at the door and part of the hallway. And then I waited. I acted normal. Took Chloe to her ballet class. Made dinner. Watched that dumb dating show Lacey liked and laughed in all the right places. I even let her lean on me during a thunderstorm and tell me how much she appreciated me sticking with her through the rough patch. My stomach turned the whole time. The house felt like a stage now. Like I was living in the middle of a slow-burn tragedy I'd already read to the end. But I needed to keep the lights on a little longer. Just until she tipped her hand one last time. That came sooner than I thought. 3 nights later, after Chloe went to sleep and I told Lacey I was heading out to get gas, I parked 3 blocks down again and tuned into the feed from the hallway camera. I watched as she paced in front of Chloe's door, phone pressed to her ear, whispering too low to catch all the words. But what I did catch: she's asleep. Yes, Paul's out. I think it's time we push this forward. I froze. She opened Chloe's bedroom door, closed it behind her. The feed didn't catch what she did inside, only that she was in there for 6 minutes. When she left, she didn't turn toward the master bedroom. She went into my home office. I waited an hour before going home. She was already in bed, pretending to sleep. I climbed in next to her, my chest full of needles, my throat raw from silence. The next morning, Chloe was fine. Said nothing unusual happened. But when I checked the baby monitor logs, the internal microphone had picked something up. Lacey standing over her bed, whispering, "You're going to stay with Mommy soon, okay? Just us. Daddy's too busy with other things. He'll understand. But we'll be better off." It was all I needed. I called my lawyer. Told him it was time to move. We filed the preliminary custody paperwork the next day. The plan was to serve Lacey in person within the week, but before we even had the chance, she beat me to it. I came home from work that Friday and found the dining table covered in printed documents. Her name on the top. Custody petition. Alimony request. Restraining order filings. All based on a handwritten statement that I had become erratic, emotionally unstable, and had abandoned the family for hours without explanation. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, smiling like she'd already won. "You wanted to play games," she said. "Let's see how you handle the real world." I picked up the papers and thumbed through them. Some of her claims were half-truths at best. Some were total fiction. "I hope you know lying under oath is still a crime," I said calmly. She shrugged. "Only if they can prove it." I nodded. "Okay." And then I walked upstairs, gathered my drives, the cloud links, the videos, the text backups, the message logs, the financials, and drove to my lawyer's office. That night, Chloe stayed with my sister. She thought it was a sleepover. We made pancakes and played board games and tucked her in like everything was normal. I didn't cry until I got back to the car, because I knew what was coming next. Court. Depositions. Maybe even more manipulation. But I had truth on my side. And this time, she didn't know just how much I had. The hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday. A standard custody motion review. Just a judge, a clerk, and 2 attorneys. Nothing dramatic. No jury. No cameras. Lacey had no idea how many cards I was holding, and I intended to keep it that way until the exact moment they were needed. The night before, I barely slept. Not from nerves, those had calcified into something colder, something surgical, but because I couldn't stop thinking about Chloe. Her laugh. Her quiet resilience. Her drawings taped on the fridge, tiny worlds where moms and dads held hands and smiled. I wondered how much longer those pictures would include both of us. I was dressing the next morning when I got the call from Petra, the PI. "You're going to want to sit down," she said. I didn't. I stood there, half-nodded, staring at the mirror. I've been digging through Ben's finances. He's not just some old flame or coworker. He's her ex-husband. That knocked the wind out of me. "What?" I said. She told me she never married before. Well, she did. In Nevada. Briefly. Records were sealed, but not perfectly. There's more. I sank onto the edge of the bed, barely registering the weight of her words. They were married 6 years ago. Same year you met her. She was still legally married to him when your relationship started. The room spun. She divorced him 3 months before your wedding. I couldn't breathe. She changed her last name twice. Once after marrying him. Again before marrying you. My guess? She was trying to bury the past. But here's where it gets really messy. Petra paused, then said, she took out a life insurance policy on him during their marriage. He didn't know. The same type she tried to apply for on you last year. I felt like I'd been punched. "You're saying she?" I'm saying there's a pattern. I found two other men. One filed a police report for fraud. One had a restraining order but dropped it. All within a 5-year window. She's done this before. Yes. And I think she was planning to do it again. I hung up and sat there in silence for a long time. The files. The hidden accounts. The manipulation. She wasn't just cruel. She was dangerous. This wasn't a bitter custody battle. It was the final act in a long con that only failed because of one misplaced SD card and a daughter who didn't know she was saving her father's life. At court, Lacey wore a pale blue dress and a fake smile. She waved slightly at me as I entered the courtroom like we were estranged friends about to have coffee. Her lawyer, a smug man with thick glasses and the energy of a middle school debate coach, had a folder thicker than mine. The judge opened the hearing by asking for brief statements. Her attorney went first. He painted a picture of a loving mother abandoned by a husband who had succumbed to stress and mental decline, who had disengaged from his family after placing a relative in a care facility, and who had increasingly volatile behavior patterns. He said Lacey had tried to hold things together but feared for her and Chloe's emotional safety. It was, objectively, a very good lie. Then it was our turn. My attorney stood slowly, set a small flash drive on the table, and said, "Your Honor, we'd like to submit supplemental evidence, including audio and video recordings, corroborating statements, and financial documentation, all relevant to Ms. Mercer's conduct and credibility." He plugged in the drive. For the next 12 minutes, the courtroom was completely silent. The judge watched the video from Chloe's room, heard the whispering, saw the hallway footage, then the recordings from the guest room, the insults, the manipulation. My attorney followed it with Petra's written report, her marriage history, the secret insurance application, the conversation about custody strategy with Ben, the fact that she'd called me mentally unstable while simultaneously coordinating with a man she once lied to about being pregnant. By the time it ended, the judge's face looked like granite. Lacey didn't speak. She didn't blink. The judge didn't issue a final ruling that day, but he made two things clear. One, Chloe would remain with me until a full custody hearing could be scheduled. And two, he was issuing a temporary protective order restricting Lacey's contact with both Chloe and me until further review. As we left the courtroom, Lacey turned to me, her face cracking under the weight of whatever mask she'd been wearing for so long. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You don't get to walk away clean." I looked her dead in the eye. "Neither do you." I thought that would be the last time I saw her in person. But 2 nights later, it happened again. Chloe had gone to bed early. I was in the kitchen, making tea, when I saw headlights flash across the window. A car pulled up and parked across the street. I watched through the curtains. It was her. She didn't get out. Just sat there, engine idling, staring at the house like it belonged to her. I called the non-emergency line. Told them everything. They sent a patrol car within 15 minutes. But by the time it arrived, she was already gone. What I didn't know, what none of us knew until the next day, was that she hadn't driven off alone. Petra's assistant had been tailing her as a precaution. He followed her downtown, watched her meet with Ben in a parking lot behind an old diner. They were arguing, loudly, and then Lacey pulled something from her purse. Not a gun. A folder. She shoved it at him, screaming. Later, Petra would tell me she had photos taken from that exchange. In one, Ben is reading a printed email from my attorney. His face pale. His hands shaking. That was when he walked away from her. Lacey didn't follow. She just stood there in the middle of the lot, the wind tearing her hair in every direction, papers flapping around her like feathers from a broken wing. The next morning, I got a message from Ben. A single sentence. "I didn't know. I'm sorry." That was it. And maybe it wasn't enough. But it was something. It's been 11 weeks since that day in court, and the storm that used to be my life has mostly passed, though some mornings, I still wake up waiting for thunder that never comes. Lacey never returned to the house again. She tried once, through a formal appeal, but the judge denied her visitation. Too many red flags, too much credible evidence. The full custody hearing was swift. Her lawyer withdrew after the audio was played in open court. The insurance application sealed the deal. Chloe's custody was awarded to me in full. No shared weekends. No holiday split. Nothing. The judge said he'd never seen a case pivot so hard against a petitioner. Called it textbook psychological endangerment. She didn't even fight the ruling. When the judgment came down, she signed the paperwork with that same detached half-smile I'd seen during our wedding ceremony, the one that made me think she was just nervous. Maybe she was never nervous. Maybe she was just bored. She moved out of state shortly after. Left no forwarding address. Stopped responding to court-mandated requests for therapy records and income disclosures. Her social media went dark. Then vanished too. Last I heard, he moved out of his apartment and went offline. Some people run from consequences. Others vanish because they realize they were complicit and can't live with it. I've stopped wondering about them. My focus is here now. Chloe's drawings have changed. There's still a mom and dad, but the mom is fuzzy now, more of a stick figure with a dress, smiling vaguely in the background. The dad is always holding her hand. And sometimes, there's an older man in a rocking chair, surrounded by birds or a cat, or just a big heart drawn over his head. Ray's doing better than anyone expected. His memory comes and goes, but his spirit has returned. He laughs again, tells the same stories he told me as a kid, about fishing trips that probably never happened and people I'm convinced he made up on the spot. But Chloe eats it up. He calls her Little Comet now because she burns bright and fast and always comes back around. She calls him Grandpa Ray, though he's not, technically. Arlene still visits. Petra stopped by once, too, handed me her final invoice with a wink and a piece of advice. Next time, trust your gut a little earlier. I told her there wouldn't be a next time. The house feels lighter. Not because we redecorated or opened windows more often, but because whatever presents used to hang in the corners, the bitterness, the cold calculation, it's gone now. Sometimes I swear I hear echoes of her footsteps, but it's probably just memory playing tricks. Or maybe it's the guilt I haven't quite unpacked yet, because I still ask myself how I missed it. Not just the cruelty, but the hollowness beneath it. Was I so desperate to believe in the version of her I married that I couldn't see the one she really was? I've stopped needing an answer to that. Instead, I focus on routines, on Chloe's bedtime rituals, on Ray's medicine, on the slow but steady reclaiming of joy. Some nights, when Chloe's asleep and Ray's watching old game shows in the den, I sit on the back porch with a cup of coffee and just breathe. No plans, no plots, just air. A few weeks ago, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Postmarked from a city in Idaho. Inside was a single photograph. It was one of those cheap Polaroids. The kind you get from a wedding photo booth or a backyard birthday party. In it, Lacey is standing by a fence, looking off to the side. She looks thinner, older, not quite real. Next to her is a little boy, maybe 3 or 4, holding a balloon shaped like a sword. Her arm is resting on his shoulder. On the back of the photo, in familiar handwriting, it says, "He'll never know the truth. Don't bother trying to find us." That's when I realized the boy might be Ben's. Or maybe not. Maybe she used a stranger's child for the photo. Or maybe she was trying to stir something in me. Regret, curiosity, fear. I burned the photo in the grill that night. She doesn't get to take up space here anymore. The next morning, Chloe climbed into my lap while I was sipping coffee and asked if we could go visit Grandpa Ray early. "We'll bring him banana bread," she said. "He likes it even though he always says he doesn't." I laughed. Deal. As we got ready, I looked around our home, small, quiet, filled with imperfections. A chip tile by the fridge. A flickering porch light I still haven't replaced. Drawings on the wall. A laundry basket that never seems to empty. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a waiting room for something better. It felt like life. Messy. Uncertain. But mine.